Cuando pensamos en la universidad, pensamos en desarrollo, progreso, aprender para el futuro. Pensamos en comunidad, con quien construir, trabajar, proyectar una vida y adquirir las herramientas para cambiar nuestro mundo. Somos una universidad con historia, legado y un amor profundo por la sabiduría. En 1962, en la Escuela Militar de Cadetes José María Córdoba, nació un sueño que más adelante sería el futuro y alma mater de miles de colombianos. Gracias al trabajo del Cuerpo Médico del Hospital Militar, en 1978 se organizó la Escuela de Medicina y Ciencias de la Salud, y de esta manera se iba complementando el abanico de ofertas académicas. A inicios de la década de los 80, nos reconocieron como Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, siendo parte de la educación pública del país, con el propósito inicial de ser un apoyo para la formación académica de las fuerzas militares. Ahora, somos parte de la historia profesional de miles de personas motivadas por aprender.
En el año 2009 creamos un laboratorio vivo con más de 75 hectáreas, un campus moderno y tecnológico que ofrece a nuestros estudiantes condiciones sublimes para el desarrollo integral. Un lugar estratégico en la sabana Centro, arquitectónicamente responsable con el medio ambiente, rodeado de zonas verdes e historia, donde la tranquilidad y la armonía crean un espacio único e ideal para el aprendizaje experiencial. Es por eso que volvimos a lo esencial usando el tren de la sabana, acercando lo que parecía lejos, poniendo a disposición herramientas de este siglo y reinventándonos día a día para seguir siendo símbolo de proyección social. Diseñamos un abanico de oportunidades con bases sólidas y modernas para que los estudiantes encuentren su camino y adquieran herramientas y habilidades para la vida, guiados por 1.593 docentes entregados a su vocación, aportando así al desarrollo profesional y cultural de nuestro país.
Fundamentados en la cooperación e intercambio cultural, contamos con 93 convenios internacionales en 66 universidades aliadas en el exterior, relaciones directas con embajadas, organizaciones y empresas para que el conocimiento trascienda sin límites alrededor del mundo. Más de 54.000 egresados han pasado por nuestros 118 laboratorios y talleres de física, química, ingeniería, biología y ciencias de la salud. Espacios diseñados con tecnología de punta con el propósito de entregar a nuestro país puñados de profesionales con experiencia real y altamente calificada para asumir los retos de nuestro presente.
Apoyando la innovación y el espíritu emprendedor con ideas de vanguardia, contamos con 49 patentes nacionales y 3 internacionales que respaldan el compromiso de la investigación neogranadina en la historia de nuestro país. Generamos opciones de desarrollo profesional sin fronteras. Por esto la Facultad de Estudios a Distancia FAEDIS cumple una función importante, llevando oportunidades de titulación profesional a personas en todos los rincones del mundo, con su modalidad semipresencial y virtual. En esta era marcada por la tecnología digital, nuestra Universidad 4.0 se actualiza constantemente para brindar una experiencia académica de calidad multicampus para la formación de ciudadanos globales.
Estamos certificados bajo las normas de excelencia y alta calidad, generando confianza a nuestros estudiantes con altos estándares académicos y profesionales entendiendo los cambios y contextos del mundo. Nuestro compromiso es con Colombia, por eso tenemos programas sociales liderados por profesionales neogranadinos, como es el caso de Isashi Palá, que busca apoyar y mejorar la calidad de vida de las comunidades wayú en la Alta Guajira para contribuir a la construcción de paz con educación en el territorio. Inspiramos creatividad, las ideas innovadoras, el fortalecimiento del sector productivo, el emprendimiento y el cuidado del medio ambiente.
Porque la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada es moderna y comprometida con la educación de alta calidad. Es la universidad que todos queremos.
El carné te identifica como egresado neogranadino. Al usarlo, tendrás acceso a los beneficios y servicios de la universidad. Ingresa a las bases virtuales y disfruta los contenidos académicos y libros electrónicos que la universidad tiene a tu servicio. Recuerda que eres bienvenido a todas las sedes de la universidad, en donde podrás hacer uso de las instalaciones como gimnasios, áreas deportivas, salas de estudio y bibliotecas. Participa en los eventos académicos, deportivos y culturales de nuestra casa de estudios y vincúlate con los seleccionados deportivos y grupos artísticos representativos de nuestra universidad. Accede a tu correo electrónico institucional. Recuerda que este servicio es vitalicio. En la página web del Centro de Egresados encontrarás el portal de empleo, en el que podrás encontrar ofertas laborales disponibles para ti. Si ya tienes o piensas crear una empresa, el Centro de Egresados te ofrece el servicio de difusión a través de sus medios de comunicación. Ayúdanos a construir una red de egresados empresarios neogranadinos. Aprovecha el apoyo que la Vicerrectoría de Investigaciones brinda a jóvenes emprendedores en proyectos empresariales de iniciativa propia. La Universidad Militar Nueva Granada se preocupa por tu vida profesional y por ello pone a tu disposición capacitaciones, actualizaciones, talleres de herramientas efectivas para la consecución de empleo y de emprendimiento que son liderados por las facultades y apoyados por el Centro de Egresados. Conoce el programa de seguimiento a egresados, mediante el cual evaluamos la percepción de los egresados en el momento de su grado, al año, a los 3 años y a los 5 años, con el fin de conocer sus experiencias profesionales y opiniones sobre el programa cursado, por medio de una encuesta que llegará a tu correo institucional en estos 4 momentos. Esperamos contar con tu apoyo para poder retroalimentar a los diferentes programas y crear oportunidades de mejora para la universidad. Recuerda que nuestro centro es un escenario para que todos nuestros egresados se reencuentren con su alma mater. Por esto es importante que actualices de manera permanente tus datos personales y consultes periódicamente el portal web de la universidad. En la sección Egresados te informamos constantemente y oportunamente sobre los servicios y beneficios que tenemos para ti.
Muy buenas noches, les damos a todos ustedes la bienvenida a este primer espacio que abre el Centro de Egresados de la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada para los webinars y capacitaciones y actualizaciones que trae la universidad para todos ustedes, nuestros graduados de esta orgullosamente casa de estudio acreditada en este 2021. En esta noche les queremos extender un saludo de parte de las altas directivas y de parte también de nosotros, el Centro de Egresados, a todos los que se conectan hasta ahora a nuestra transmisión. Este webinar, el cual está dirigido y vamos a estar hablando un poco acerca de las hojas de vida y las entrevistas en inglés. Tenemos una invitada supremamente especial. En unos momentos vamos a conocerla. Pero mientras tanto queremos darles a todos ustedes la calurosa bienvenida a este primer espacio de nuestro ciclo de actualizaciones del Centro de Egresados de la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Como saben, esta presentación y este webinar tiene algo muy particular. Lo vamos a estar desarrollando en inglés y porque nuestra invitada está conectada directamente desde Australia. Trae mucha buena información para todos nosotros. Así que sin más preámbulos voy a iniciar con la presentación. So, welcome to Ms. Sandra Petronacci. She is a director of the studies in ILCS Sydney and University of Pathways and holds a Master of Applied Linguistics in TESOL. A graduate diploma in secondary education and graduate certificate in higher education and international diploma in language teaching management. Sandra has worked in education for almost 20 years as a teacher, trainer, and academic manager, helping to support numerous students of staff members to achieve their professional goals. She's convener of the new SW Academic Management Special Interest Group. So let's give a big welcome to our guest of tonight, Sandra Petronacci. Thank you for join us in this night here in Colombia or morning in Sydney.
Thank you, Christian. Thanks for the lovely introduction. And hello, everybody at the Universidad Militar. I hope I said that okay. It's great to be here. At this point, I will share my slides. So just bear with me. Oops, sorry. Just bear with me as I get those together. And then we'll be able to start. Okay. All right. Christian, are the slides visible at this point?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. I've got a lot of things here to share with you, everybody, so I will try not to say too much, but I'm very happy to have questions at the end. So as Christian said, I'm from ILSC, and today I'm very excited, in fact, to talk to you about preparing CVs and doing interviews in English-speaking environments. So as Christian mentioned, I'm in Sydney, Australia. I'm at ILSC Education Group. I've been there a couple of years now, and I've been in education for most of my career. So for today's webinar, I'll just give you a little overview. It will be divided into two parts. The first part will be talking about CVs in English-speaking countries, and the second part will be talking about interviews in English-speaking countries. I'm not sure if you can ask questions in the chat box or not, but I'll just keep talking unless unless someone asks me to stop. I'm very happy to have some discussion and questions at the end, and please let me know if I'm speaking too fast, if I'm speaking too slow, just let me know.
Sorry, Sandra.
Yes.
Can you share your screen once again? Because we are not watching your presentation. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was, yes, just one moment. I'll try this again. Okay, here we go. Now, what can you see at this point, Christian?
Now we are watching.
Okay, perfect. So I'll put it in presentation mode. Is that the right view now?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so as I mentioned, if I'm speaking too fast or too slow, please tell me, okay? So first of all, we'll look at creating your CV, and I understand many of you will have different experiences of having your own CV, attending interviews, etc. Some of this might be a little bit basic, some of it might be new ideas, but I hope it can be valuable for you in some way. So as a quick overview, we'll look at what to include, what to avoid, how to format your CV. I'll give you some examples. We'll talk about LinkedIn profiles. We'll talk about developing your personal brand and also participating in your professional community. Okay, and Christian, that's coming through okay? The slides are moving all right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Okay, so creating your CV, step one. The usual things to include, which you will know, the usual biodata, name, email, phone number, address, etc. Your LinkedIn profile link, very important. So in English-speaking countries, prospective employers will be looking at LinkedIn. They'll be checking out your profile. They'll even be looking at Facebook. They are quite strongly into checking out social media for future employees. Step two, what to include. A very important aspect to help differentiate your CV from other people's is to have a professional statement. And this is just a short paragraph to demonstrate your career goals, your particular skills, your philosophies, etc. It will help you show your passion for what you do. And the important thing is that this paragraph, and your whole CV as well, but this paragraph should be tailored, should be customized to each role that you're applying for. So you try to align your professional statement with the mission, the values of the organization that you're applying a job, in which you're applying a job for. The next thing, so that comes first. The next thing, first your biodata, then the paragraph. Then the next thing you should have is your qualifications. Have those in reverse order. So the most recent to the least. Now, with those qualifications, include your graduation and completion dates. And I forgot to put there in the slides, also include the name of the institution, university, college, school, whatever it happens to be. Moving along to step 3, also then include your workplaces, again in reverse order. So start with the most recent, include the start and finish dates, and very importantly, include your key responsibilities and your key achievements in those different roles. And this just can be some simple bullet points. Also include any volunteer work you may have done, especially if maybe you are newly graduated and you haven't had a job before. That's okay. Include the volunteer work. You may have, perhaps you worked at a camp with school kids, or perhaps you helped deliver food to elderly people in lockdown. Anything like that, that's really important to show your employer, your future employer, that you are an active member of your local community beyond your profession as well. Okay, step 4. There are some really important things to include. Professional interest groups, and I'll talk more about those later. Include any conferences you've attended or presentations you've given. Now, maybe you're thinking, I haven't been to any conferences, I haven't presented anything. That's okay. Just start small steps. And at the moment, you might have realized already that many conferences, webinars, etc. are free because we're all online. So look in your field, in your areas of interest, look for conference that you can attend that might be free or have a very small fee. Attend those and make sure you add that to your CV, okay? And then start to, as you build your confidence, start to consider giving presentations yourself as well. And you could start small, all right? Another thing to consider is writing articles, writing blog posts in your field, outside your field, what you have a passion for. And if you've received any professional awards or any academic awards from your university, for example, put those in your CV as well. Now, I've put short courses there, and by short courses, I mean, for example, MOOCs, massive online open courses. Most of those are free, or you can pay a small fee to get a certificate. And there are lots of courses you can do on LinkedIn as well for free. And there are many short courses, micro-credentials that you'll be able to find just simply by Googling. Complete, again, baby steps, start some courses, complete them, add them to your CV. Now, include a few basic things too, like your computer skills, if you've got a car license, if you have a first aid certificate. This is really interesting for employers to know. And also have 2 or 3 professional referees from related fields, preferably your previous managers, maybe one of your university lecturers. It's good to have the referees already in your CV, okay? Talk to them first, of course, get their permission. But as an employer, so over the years, I've interviewed hundreds of teachers, admin staff, student advisors, etc. And when I receive a CV with no referees and I have to ask for that extra information, it's a little bit inconvenient for me as an employer. If I see your referees are immediately there, I think, great, this person's ready, they're good to go. All right, moving along to step 5. And Christian, how's my speech speed? Is everything okay at your end?
Yes, for sure.
Great, thank you. All right, so step 5, looking at things to avoid. With a photo, I've put a question mark. This really depends on the culture that you're applying for a job in. So for example, in Australia, we tend not to have photos on CVs. In North America, it's much more common. Okay, so think carefully about the environment where you're applying for a job, and that will help you decide whether or not you put a photograph. If you do put a photograph, of course, make it very professional, okay? No strange photographs or shots at the beach or anything like that. It's best not to mention your birth date or your age. So people who are going through your CVs are trained not to be ageist or racist or sexist, etc. Okay, so try to leave that out too. And let's say you're applying for a job in North America, as an example. Avoid putting an international phone number back in your home country. Keep it local. So as much as you can, try to get those local connections and keep your details local, because an employer wants to see that you're there, you're ready, you can start almost immediately. All right. If they have to start calling international numbers, it could be something that will make them hesitate. Now, during your career or your studies, you may have spent time traveling, you may have spent time on parental leave. Put that in your CV. Don't leave a gap. If you have a gap of a year or 2 years, then a future employer will say, what happened here? Was this person unemployed? Did they have a negative experience with another employer? So make sure you state very clearly, parental leave, September 2021 to 2022, etc. Okay. All right, step 6, formatting your CV. I think a lot of people use Microsoft Word, and that's fine. That's okay. But I think if you really want your CV to look different, to stand out from the other people's CVs, then consider using an online tool. There's a great free tool called Canva, canva.com. You probably know it. You can use it to create many different kinds of text types, but one of them is resumes. There's also resume.io. I'm not sure if there's a cost associated with that one, but Canva is free. So you just have to create an account, and you can create some very professional looking CVs through that tool. Now, in terms of length, 2 to 3 pages is ideal. The further along you are in your career, you might have 3 pages. If you're at the beginning of your career, you might have 1 page. And like I mentioned before, tailor it or customize it to the specific role you are applying for. So don't just use your same version of your CV to apply for 5 different jobs. Change it each time to make it suit, to make it align with the job that you're applying for. Now, choose very simple fonts and colors. Keep it clean, keep it neat, keep it modern, okay? Not too much text. And make sure that you definitely check for spelling errors, okay? Now, here are some examples of CVs that I took from Canva. As you can see, these ones have got photographs. Again, it's up to you, depending on the environment you're in, if you wish to include your photograph or not. But as you can see, these ones here, there's a little bit of color, very neat, very clear, formatted in a very practical kind of way. Now, in terms of submission, so you're applying for a job, now you need to submit your CV. Make sure you follow the submission instructions very carefully. So for example, they might require a cover letter. Write that one very carefully, very specifically, according to the job you're applying for. They might ask you to submit via an online application portal, in which case my advice would be write your submission in Word first, because if you're writing in the portal and your internet drops out, you can lose everything. Make sure you run a spell check, If you can, ask a friend or a colleague to proofread for you, just to make sure that they pick up any errors, any typos. And then it's okay to politely follow up with an email or a phone call a week later, you know, to the HR department or to whoever has advertised the role, just to ask how your application is going. LinkedIn. Right. So I've got a lot to say about LinkedIn. I'll try to keep it brief. My strongest piece of advice to you here is don't underestimate the importance of LinkedIn, especially in English-speaking countries. We have adopted LinkedIn very strongly, okay? So you need to create a strong profile on LinkedIn. Again, a very professional photo. And don't just create a profile on LinkedIn, participate. You have to actively participate, okay? So follow, you know, different professional groups that you might be interested in, follow other colleagues, connect with them, make intelligent posts where you can contribute. Maybe you'll have read an excellent article in your field and you might share that article on LinkedIn so that other people can benefit as well. Seek new connections, but don't try to connect with everybody. Only try to connect with people who are relevant to your field. You can ask your colleagues to endorse your skills so they can, by that, they can go into your profile. They can say, you know, that you have skills in particular areas. And then really importantly, find a balance. Don't overdo the posting or the connecting in LinkedIn. Just find a nice balance. You don't want to be spamming people, but you don't want to be too silent either, all right? So find that balance and keep your posts professional. Now, developing your personal brand. This is an important one, again, because you want to be able to differentiate yourself from the hundreds of other people applying for the job that you want, yeah? So you have to build your personal brand, and it's important so it makes your skills visible, your contributions to the field visible, and this is a way to build trust as well. So you might be asking, how do I do this? How do I build my personal brand? So the top things to do: join professional organizations, industry associations, communities of practice in your field. Again, attend conferences and webinars. And when you attend the conferences and webinars, don't be afraid to talk to people. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, what you do, what your passions are. And then you will slowly start to get to know other people and they will get to know you. Where you can, volunteer for special projects in the workplace, outside the workplace, in your university. It's important to do this because it shows that you have an interest beyond your own career development. It shows that you want to contribute. Read newsletters, write for newsletters, again, articles, blog posts, whatever you're confident doing. And you can join or even start a community of practice. And one of the best places to belong to a community of practice for free is Facebook. Look on Facebook, look for what might exist in your field, become a member, post intelligently, again, contribute to that community. So, for example, I happen to be a moderator of a community of practice called AusELT, and that's for English language teachers in Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific. And we've got thousands of members in that group. And you get to know other people, you get ideas from other people. It's a great way to immerse yourself in your profession. And again, of course, use LinkedIn to build your personal brand. All right, Christian, any questions? Shall I take questions at this stage or shall I move on to the second part?
If you prefer, we can continue to the second part, and at the end we're gonna let the space for all our visitors and the people who are connected right now to make the questions.
Okay, perfect. No problem. No problem. Before I begin the second part, I just want to go back for a moment to when I was talking about submitting your CV and submitting your job application. One thing I forgot to say, and I think this is very important. Let's say that you're applying for a job and there is a 2-week window of time in which to apply for this job. My advice would be, don't apply for the job, don't submit your application on day one. If you submit it on day one, the employer will think that you've done it in a rush, you don't really care very much about it, and you're applying for hundreds of other jobs elsewhere. Also, don't submit it on the last day. If you submit it on the last day, you will look disorganized, you will look like you're not very interested, but you're just throwing it in there. So time it very carefully. When you submit your job application, submit in the middle. All right, so say it's a 2-week period, submit 7 days in. Okay, that's a really important one. All right, moving along to job interviews. So a bit of an overview of what I'll cover in this section. We'll look at what to expect, what to say and do, what to avoid. We'll talk a little bit about small talk, because making small talk in English-speaking environments is very important, but there's a good way to do it and a not so good way to do it. We'll talk about the kinds of questions you could expect when you're being interviewed, the kinds of questions that you can ask. We'll talk briefly about online interviews, group interviews, and DISC profiles or personality tests or personality assessment tools. So step 1, what to expect. In English-speaking countries, interviews are on a spectrum. They can be very formal. They can also be very informal. It really depends on the organization. It depends on the field. It depends on the interview panel itself. But there are a lot of, let's say, guidelines that organizations will follow, human resource guidelines. So there are some common things that you can expect when you're going for your job interview. You might have one interviewer, or you might have a panel. And in that panel, there could be an HR, a human resource person. There could be someone from outside the team or in a different part of the organization who is meant to be the unbiased observer. And you'll most likely have 1 or 2 people from the team that you'll be joining, including your manager, your future manager. Now, you might be called back even for a second interview or a third interview. Expect this, be ready for this. Or they might call you back a second time or a third time for a cup of coffee and a chat. Now, this sounds very informal. The philosophy behind this is the employer is judging how do you behave in different situations. So you might behave in a very formal and professional way in an interview, but they want to see you in an informal environment. How do you behave in that situation there? So all the time, all the while that they are interviewing you, obviously they're judging your professional skills, but they're also judging your behaviors. They're judging whether you're a good cultural fit for their workplace. And by cultural fit, nothing to do with nationality. This has just got to do with the ethos of the workplace, the philosophy behind how the team or how the organization approaches their work, how they treat their staff. There might be a team with a gap and they're wanting to fill that particular gap, but they want to make sure that you will work well with the team that's already there. They want to make sure that you'll fit in, that you won't cause problems, and you'll help boost team morale. Okay, step 2, what to say and do. Always research the organization so that you can show your knowledge and ask good questions. Make sure you've read their mission statement. Make sure you've read their vision, their values, their core values. It's very important to show that you have put the effort in to understand who the organization is. Now, regardless of the job, dress formally. If you're applying for a job as an engineer, if you're applying for a job as someone in a supermarket, it doesn't matter. Dress formally every time. The employer wants to see that when the occasion demands, you can take on that professional role and you can be a good face or a good ambassador of the organization. Make sure you arrive early. Never arrive late to an interview. Even arrive an hour early if you like. Find the place that you need to go, then go have a cup of coffee or tea, relax, okay? When you get there, greet everyone. Greet everyone regardless of their level at the organization. So for example, if there is an administrative assistant who is there at the desk, greet them to give them just as much importance as everyone else. And remember that in English-speaking countries, it's a very egalitarian society, okay? So we tend to call everybody by their first name. We greet them, we shake hands regardless of the role that they are in. And of course, make sure you make eye contact. Now, eye contact is an interesting one because it has different meanings in different cultures. In some cultures, making eye contact can be seen as overconfident or even arrogant. In English-speaking countries, all English-speaking countries, eye contact is very important. If you don't make eye contact, then the impression you will give is that you are too shy, not very confident, or even hiding something, okay? So if you don't make that eye contact, people will question your intentions, your motives. So this is a really important one. Always shake hands except in COVID times, of course. Outside of COVID times, shake hands, give a strong, firm handshake. No dead fish handshakes, because your employer will be measuring your strength of character in your handshake, okay? Smile, make small talk, don't get too chatty, find a nice balance. And when you are answering the questions, give enough detail, but be concise, okay? Don't start telling your whole life story or anything like that. Answer the question, give a bit of extra detail, and then stop. And if they want to know more, they will ask you, okay? Or you can ask them, would you like me to expand on that? Now, explain your achievements, but be a little bit humble. Don't be too overconfident. They don't want to see a big ego. They want to see a person who can join the organization without creating too many problems, okay? All right, step 3, what to avoid. Organize your own transport or parking. Don't ring and ask how to get there, where to park. That gives a very bad impression. They want to know that you're an independent person. You can research things for yourself. Hopefully you won't arrive late, but if, let's say, you're caught in a traffic accident or something like that, make sure you call them, let them know, okay? Don't be a no-show. Make sure you call. When you get there, don't start asking questions immediately. Don't start taking control. Let them take control, all right? They've invited you for the interview. Let them control the situation. Again, don't tell them your life story, and never, ever, ever complain about your previous employer. Even if you left because you were unhappy, never say anything negative, all right? Your future employer won't be impressed, and they will think to themselves, "Ooh, what will this person say about me and my organization if they move on in future?" All right, small talk. I mentioned this before. Expect small talk at the beginning. In English-speaking countries, this is our culture, right? And most employers will do this to help calm your nerves. So you might be asked about the weather, and that could seem very superficial, and you might think, what do I care about the weather? What do I care if it's raining? But in English-speaking environments, this is a way to start to build trust, calm nerves, build a relationship, break the ice, all right? So, you know, they might say, gee, it's a bit cold and rainy today. And you might reply, oh, yeah, sure is. Let's hope tomorrow is a bit warmer. Simple as that. They might say to you, oh, did you find our office okay? Don't say, oh, no, it was terrible. I couldn't find it at all. I had trouble getting here. Instead, just say, yeah, absolutely. I looked it up on Google Maps. No issue at all. Got here, no problem. Leave it at that, okay? Now, if there's a panel that's interviewing you, be prepared for some of those panel members to remain silent. Not all of them will ask questions. If they don't ask questions, still make the effort to make eye contact with them. That's really important, even if they're not directing questions at you. Make eye contact with every single panel member. Now, you can expect a lot of direct questions. So the direct questions, you know, why did you apply for this role? Why did you leave your last role? What interests you about this organization? What can you bring? They'll ask you to describe your best qualities, which again, find a balance. Be confident, but not overconfident in this. They'll ask you to describe your weaknesses and what areas you need to develop in. And there are a couple of things you should never, ever say. Never say, oh, I'm a bit disorganized, all right? An employer will think, no, there's no excuse for being disorganized. Organize yourself. I don't have time for a disorganized person, okay? Never say, I'm not very good with Excel and tech or Word. Never say that. Instead, go and do a course. There are free online courses. Do a course. Get yourself up to at least an intermediate level when it comes to tech. And if they say, the areas you need to develop in, never say, no, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm developed. And it's funny because a lot of people do this, and it's a very bad way of responding to that question. So always make sure, sorry, I'm just checking my time here. Always make sure that you show that you are open to professional development. Okay, and a very popular question that people are asking a lot now is what kind of management style you prefer. This can be hard to answer, so think carefully about this, and this is also where the online personality assessment tools will help you. They'll ask you reflective questions that relate to real situations in previous jobs. So they'll say, for example, tell us about a time when you had a tight deadline, or tell us about a time when you had an issue with a coworker. And they'll want to hear a little story. Again, don't go for too long. Keep it brief, keep it concise. The important thing is, don't just talk about how terrible the time was that you had an issue with a coworker. Talk about how you resolved that issue. Talk about how you used your initiative to speak to the person one-on-one. You found some common ground. You worked through it together. Okay, so always make sure you give the positive outcome. Same thing with an unhappy customer, for example. Give the positive outcome. Talk about, dealing with different cultures. Make sure you discuss or you reassure them that your interpersonal, intercultural communication skills are very strong. Okay. At the end of most interviews, you will be asked if you have any questions. So make sure you have 1 or 2 questions up your sleeve ready, because if you don't have any questions ready, they will think you're not interested. Now, never ask immediately what the salary is. Don't ask that question. Wait till later, all right, for that. Some really intelligent questions you can ask might be something like, what do you think the biggest challenges of this role will be? Or how would you describe the culture of your organization? Okay, these kinds of questions show that you are invested, that you are interested, that you're thinking about the important things, that you're not just thinking about how much money you will earn. All right. Okay, and I'll move along to the next slide. Now, you might have, especially now in the pandemic era, you might be asked to do an online interview. Take the same approach for your online interview. Even though it's online, still dress formally. Try standing at a bench rather than sitting down, because when you're standing, you know, a lot of psychological research shows that actually, especially standing with your feet apart, that gives you more confidence. So it might help you get through the interview. Make sure, of course, you've got a strong internet connection. If you don't have a strong internet connection at home, see if you can go to a friend's house, or if your background is too messy, make sure you blur it. And look at the camera lens. Don't just look at the screen. Look at the camera lens to make sure that you're giving eye contact. Remember, we said that's really important for English-speaking environments. Okay, now group interviews are becoming really popular. I run group interviews all the time. I've been to group interviews myself as a participant as well. And employers do this for a number of reasons. One, because they can get through a lot of people fast, but also they're watching to see how you interact with other future employees. They want to see that you're a team player. Don't treat it like a competition. Make sure you're polite, you're helpful to the other candidates. If you treat it like a competition, they won't be impressed, okay? They want to see that you're going to be someone who supports your team. In that group interview environment, you can start to feel very relaxed very easily because you're talking to other candidates rather than to the interview panel. In which case, be careful. Don't get too relaxed. Don't get too informal. Build your rapport with them, but don't treat it like a party. When I do group interviews, I'm watching people very closely. I'm even watching them when they walk over to the table to grab a biscuit and pour themselves a cup of coffee, because I want to see if they're able to remain professional at all times. Another thing is with a group interview, or with any interview, in fact, the administrative staff have often been told that you will be coming, and they'll be watching you as well, and they'll be giving feedback as well. All right, so always remain professional when you're dealing with reception staff, with administrative staff, okay? Many times I've heard stories of my staff come and tell me, you know, that person was so rude to me when they gave me their CV, all right? So bear that in mind, keep that in mind. All right, we're nearly at the end. I mentioned DISC profiles, or these personal assessment tools. There are many kinds out there. You might be asked to complete one. They might have an in-house one from their human resource department. I would say to you, start practicing now in terms of answering these kinds of tools, because the reason is, I mean, you have to answer honestly, right? But the reason is that you get feedback, and it's a good way to help you learn about yourself, to help you learn about your working style, your preferred management style, your teamwork style. So there are lots of free examples, and I would strongly suggest that you have a go at doing some of these different assessment tools. Okay, now some final thoughts. So remember that even though you might be in an English-speaking country, it could be a very multicultural country. So for example, where I am, Australia, or maybe you're applying for a job in Canada, South Africa, very multicultural, which means that you'll have people of all backgrounds on your interview panel. Therefore, build your intercultural communication skills, okay? If you're not confident in those skills, again, attend a course, learn as much as you can. They're very, very important, especially if you're going to be working in a multicultural society or in a global organization. Now, the best way to get more confident in your interviews is to practice with your friends, practice with your colleagues, your classmates, whatever it takes. The more you practice, the more confident you'll feel, the smoother it will get, the more easily you'll be able to answer questions. Now, if you are rejected from a job interview, don't let it kill your confidence. Instead, what the best thing to do, I'm just turning off my timer. The best thing to do is politely ask for feedback as a developmental exercise. Now, if they give you feedback that you don't like or that you disagree with, just accept it. Don't disagree, okay? The fact is that for whatever reason, they haven't chosen you. Maybe there was someone else. Maybe you had just as, great skills as someone else, but for whatever reason, they want to fill the gap in their team and they've chosen that other person. Keep that relationship good. Don't burn that bridge. That person might pull out and you might get a call later to say, actually, we've still got a position open. Or they might call you a month later and say, look, we interviewed you, there's a different role, are you interested? So when you do ask for feedback, if you ask for feedback, be very gracious in the way you accept that feedback. Thank them, tell them that you will be developing in that area, okay? And the last thing is, I wish you all good luck when you apply for your next job. And I've got here my contact details, my email, my LinkedIn QR code there. Please feel free to contact me to get in touch. I'd be more than happy to hear from you. And thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Sandra, for this whole and a lot of explanation of these important tools for our life and in our jobs in any field that as a professional we are looking for new opportunities. So this is the time that we are separated at the moment that we made for all the people who are connected in the chat right now. Start to put out the questions. So I got a couple right now, and I'm gonna start to read it for you. So if you I think that the better way that we can do it is I'm gonna read a couple of it, and you start to answer, right?
No problem. Shall I stop sharing the screen or shall I leave it as is?
You can stop sharing so we enjoy of just your presence on the screen. Thank you, Sandra. Beautiful. So the first question is from Alejandro Martinez and says, do you advise to use the resume generated by LinkedIn as a CV? And the second one is Sandra Lorena Leon. And would you recommend me to include those jobs where I just worked a couple of months?
Okay. Yeah, two really good questions. The first question, look, it's up to you. I mean, LinkedIn it's a very professional organization. You can use the tool on LinkedIn to create your CV if you wish. As an employer, I would have no problem with that. Having said that, maybe it's also good to have a slightly more creative CV. But look, I would suggest, playing with all the different tools out there and then using the CV that you're most comfortable with. It could be from LinkedIn, it could be from Canva, it could be a Word document. The two most important things, make sure you're comfortable with your CV and make sure it really looks professional regardless of the tool that you use. Then to answer the other question, so I think that was Alejandro, I hope that was what you were asking. The other person, I think Sandra, like me, right? The question was, should you include the jobs that you've worked out for a couple of months, say where you were a casual employee? It depends. It depends. So your CV, what you are building is you are building a narrative of your career. Now, if you throw every single job, if you include every single job in there that you know, a few months here, a few months there. If you have a lot of those, it can look like you are a person who can't keep a job. It can look like you are a person who jumps from job to job, and an employer might think that, you know, there are issues, that you've had issues with other organizations. Having said that, again, you're building a narrative. So if you're a young person who hasn't yet had a full-time job, that's okay, all right? And in your professional statement, you can talk about this. You can say in your professional statement, I am launching my career. I have worked part-time in a number of organizations to get myself through university, and I have built wonderful skills through working in these different organizations, and now I'm looking for a full-time role. So if you make that really clear in your professional statement, then it's okay to add all those small jobs that might be from a different field.
Well, we have another couple of questions here. Carlos Suarez asked, the CV will be different to apply to different opportunities? And Luisa Forero says, do you recommend it include the photo and the CV?
Okay, again, two really good questions. So Carlos, to answer your questions, yes, always write your CV again for each role that you're applying for. So have a template CV, not a template, have a master CV. Let's call it your master CV that you've got, you know, on Google Drive or in Word, wherever you keep it. When you apply for a new job, copy that one over. Research the mission statement, the values of the organization where you're applying for a job, and then rewrite or modify your CV so that it aligns with those values. Obviously, it has to be genuine for you. So you can't just rewrite your professional statement like you're a different person each time. But let's say that you're applying for a job in IT, in your professional statement, and let's say that organization, I don't know, let's say it's an organization that does projects in cryptocurrency, for example. In your professional statement, you might want to mention something like you're a strong believer in the future of cryptocurrency, and that you are looking for an organization that also is moving in this direction. Okay, so yes, definitely rewrite your CV for each job that you apply for. The other question, I forgot the name of the person, which was, should you add your photo, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Luisa.
Oh, great, Luisa, wonderful. It depends. Okay, so again, it depends which country you are in, what's the organization you're applying for. You know, if you're applying for one of those big, amazing organizations like Google or Amazon, then a photo is probably good, because those kinds of organizations are very progressive, and they like to see creative, confident kinds of people. Sure, put your photo in there. If you're applying for a job as, you know, a junior engineer in a very serious engineering firm, maybe not. So think about what the job is, who the organization is, and then decide whether or not you add your photograph. It's hard to know, because at the end of the day, the person who reads the CV, they'll make the decision on whether or not to interview you. I've received CVs before that have very interesting photos. For example, I received one of, it was for someone who wished to be a student advisor in my organization, in a previous organization. And they sent through a photo of them dressed in a ball gown. And it was a little bit strange for me to see that, and it made me question the validity of the CV. So think very carefully about whether or not you want to include a photo. Oh, sorry, Christian, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry. This is the last 3 questions, so I'm gonna make it in this round. So Carlos Suarez says, some companies ask for a video presentation. Can you help us with a recommendation to do it? Alvaro says, what is the best way to avoid answering when you are asked personal questions? And Paola says, how can be better with communication skills if we want to apply for a job in Canada?
Okay, great. All right. First question, the video presentation. Yes, that's becoming really popular, in fact. Usually they will tell you what tool they wish for you to use. So they will usually tell you or provide a tool for you to do your video presentation. If they don't, you know, they might just say, send us a YouTube video, or send us, even I've come across organizations where they just say, yeah, just video yourself on your phone and send it through. Okay, so it depends, they'll take a different approach. I would apply all of the same things to that video presentation that I showed you in my presentation. You know, dress formally, speak professionally, all of that. Having said that, if the company is asking for a video presentation, again, it's often because they are a little bit more progressive and they want something a little bit different. So think of how you can make yours a little bit creative, a little bit more friendly. Don't go extreme. Don't put TikTok videos or anything like that, all right? But just think about how you can make yours a bit more engaging. And the best thing I would suggest to you is get a friend, get a colleague to help you, work on it together, do it many, many, many times until you finally have a video of yourself that you feel is genuine and engaging for you and for your employer. The next question was, Christian, I might need your help to remember what the next question was.
For sure. Alvaro says, what is the best way to avoid answering when you are asked personal questions?
Yes. Yeah, this is a really good question too. So, most human resource departments and most, let's say, employment regulators make it almost illegal is not the word I'm looking for. Let's just say let's say discriminatory to ask you personal questions. So they shouldn't ask you, and this is most English-speaking countries, they shouldn't ask you if you're married. They shouldn't ask you if you plan to have children. They shouldn't ask you if you know your sexuality, anything like that. If they do, hopefully they won't, but if they do, 2 things. 1, think to yourself, do I want to work for this organization? Because to me, if they're asking too many personal questions, then perhaps the ethos, perhaps the culture of that organization is not right for you. 2, if they ask you the personal questions, but you think they're just making small talk, then that's okay. You can participate in that. If you think they have just genuinely asked you, oh, you know, do you have kids or do you have a partner? The best way to answer is answer their question directly, but simply and keep it brief. So for example, yeah, I've got a couple of kids, they're school age now. That's it, move on. Or, yes, I have a partner, they work in a different field. Or, you know, if you're single, you might say, you don't have to say, oh, I'm single, but you can just say something like, yeah, I'm on my own at the moment. and I'm really focused on my career. Okay, so try to find just a little way around it, answer the question, but keep it brief and then move on. Hopefully, though, they won't ask you too many personal questions. And then the third question was about jobs in Canada, as far as I remember. Canada, Australia, very similar culture-wise, in fact. Now, I've been to Canada, I've traveled in Canada. I've never actually worked in Canada, so my response will be a bit limited there. But what I can tell you, because I think your question was on intercultural communication, how to develop those skills. Very similar in that sense. The multiculturalism of Australia and Canada, very similar. There are many online courses that you can follow through LinkedIn, there are MOOCs that you can do, again, those massive open online courses on building your intercultural communication skills. You'll find them also, for example, make sure you're reading the Harvard Business Review. Make sure that you subscribe to an HR, human resource newsletter. And again, you can do all that through LinkedIn. And then once you start reading these kinds of organizational newsletters and articles, they will then give you links to courses that you can do. All right. So there's actually a lot out there for building intercultural communication skills. Now, for Canada in particular, I would start, of course, again, you can just go to Google. Google, workplace rights in Canada, for example, as a starting point, working in Canada as a starting point. And then those will just lead you to all different kinds of courses, of articles that you can attend or read. But good luck applying for a job in Canada.
So, Sandra, thank you so much. There are a lot of questions on the chat, but I know that time is running so fast when we are enjoying it. So, if you have a question, you have the contact of Sandra, and you can email her. She has a wonderful and beautiful personality, so for sure she will answer it, all of it. So,
absolutely. Very, very happy to.
So thank you so much, Sandra, for having and hosting this special webinar, our first webinar of this new session of 2021. And thank you so much. Such an honor to having you here at the university, and greetings from Colombia to Sydney.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone at the university, and I really, truly wish you luck in your current and your future job applications. And like Christian said, please, if you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be very happy to do that.
Y para todos los que se encuentran en el chat, los invitamos a que se dirijan a la parte de la descripción del video, donde van a encontrar una pequeña encuesta donde deseamos saber su percepción acerca de este evento y también sus propuestas acerca de los nuevos eventos para lo que queda de este año, seguir programando más y más webinars así como este, del interés de todos ustedes. A todos ustedes también los invitamos a que se conecten a través de nuestras redes sociales en Instagram y en Facebook. Y los invitamos especialmente a que vayan a Spotify y escuchen nuestro nuevo podcast que se llama Enlace Podcast, en donde van a estar escuchando historias de egresados que se han destacado en la sociedad y que seguramente serán de inspiración para todos nosotros. Muchísimas gracias a todos por acompañarnos una vez más en el inicio de este ciclo de actualizaciones del Centro de Egresados de la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Gracias por participar y gracias por conectarse con nosotros. Nos vemos en una próxima oportunidad. Hasta luego.
Un profesor de la universidad me decía: hablemos del universo, lugar lleno de galaxias, sistemas solares, planetas, seres vivos. todos compuestos por millones de partículas, siendo diferentes la una de la otra, pero todas conviven en este ecosistema universal para que la palabra universo tenga sentido. Porque universo y universidad es mucho más que solo materias. Es un lugar donde conviven estudiantes, profesores, empleados, jóvenes, adultos, hombres, mujeres, bueno, en fin. Todos ellos conforman este universo con diversidad de pensamientos, vivencias, realidades y juntos construyen, hacen amistades, hacen negocios y hasta conocen el amor de su vida. En una universidad se iniciaron descubrimientos, deportes, inventos e investigaciones. Por eso, esta universidad sigue con las puertas abiertas para que continúes haciendo tu aporte al mundo. Puertas, que del latín porta, un portal al conocimiento y la construcción de una ciudad, un país, un continente y hasta un mundo mejor. Un mundo que ha girado millones de veces alrededor del Sol. Y en el giro del año 1962, año que despide a talentosos artistas, pero año en que también nacen talentos de nuestro tiempo. Año en que Colombia llegó al Mundial de Chile jugando este deporte que los egresados aman. Año en que también se independizó Burundi, Ruanda y Jamaica. 1962 es el año en que nace la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada para satisfacer las necesidades colombianas, aportando puñados de profesionales que transforman este país. País y universidad de la que todos hacemos parte, que te espera y te invita a que sigas aportando con investigación, conocimiento, descubrimientos y más. Porque no te hemos olvidado. Seguimos y seguiremos siendo tu universidad. Egresados de la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. La universidad que todos queremos.
Imagina un lugar donde se generen preguntas y encuentros. Un lugar con tesoros en sus pasillos, donde hallar mundos inimaginados por autores de todos los tiempos es posible. Donde surgen palabras para tejer historias. Ese lugar que nos da esperanza de que sí es posible transformar el mundo. La red de bibliotecas de la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada son espacios leídos día a día por los visitantes, tanto físicos como virtuales. Son puertas abiertas para el encuentro y el descubrimiento de nuevas posibilidades. Un portal que nos permite conectarnos con más de 89,000 tesoros en papel, millones de palabras escritas, historias y teorías de cientos de creadores e inventores de nuestro presente. Descubre los tesoros del alma que entre líneas esperan por ti.